Hey everyone. So Frost Giant, as of right now, actually, have dropped about a 7-minute video on the alpha, the pre-alpha things that are happening. It's got gameplay footage. It's got me casting some stuff from the pre-alpha tournament, which was a lot of fun. It's got, well, just a whole lot of stuff. So we're gonna dissect it. We're gonna get right into it right now. So the video opens and we get Alpha 1 footage, which is actually pretty cool. But we need to point out this is not Alpha 1 meta. They're actually using Atlases, they're using Vulcans, and realistically, it was just a bunch of Exos, which are the Marine units flying around. But hey, this is the type of stuff that you saw out of the Gamescom reveal, but it's the alpha testing recap. So can't wait to get into this more because again, let's just start a video. But to start, this is how bases, it actually didn't really look all that much, but you know what? We're going to pause this a second because you can see the speed camp right here. And that is something that Frost Giant has been talking about, how they have speed camp, or they have camps in general that they've been experimenting with. We saw that in the June gameplay reveal. We saw that elsewhere. But this speed camp is right outside of your natural. And you notice that there's a ramp right here. There's like another one a little bit further north and one to the left. We'll play the video, but that speed camp dominated the meta so hard. We had one map, and it was all predicated on who could get the most scouts out first, who could run across the map, who could capture the speed camp more than anything else, and really just cause havoc. And because of the speed camp positioning, if you took your opponent's speed camp, you would take every single one of their camps. It's worth money, and the game would kind of end. Parting was very good at that, at optimizing that, about sending Bobs early to repair and things. It was kind of gross, I guess. But of course, as Frost Giant are kind of pointing out here, we got other cool stuff. There was a lot of math that people did to make sure that, you know, how many workers would happen. So you start with, I want to say it was 6 workers, but you could go up to, I think it was 12. But you had just this big placeholder rock of Luminite. And there was a question of how efficient would it be? Would you want to go 10 workers, 12 workers? How many per side did you want? Was it better to go and send half your workers over to your natural when you take your natural to start kind of mining at 6 and 6? How did you want to do that? And of course, tons of build orders, different interactions stuff. They're going to show us right now how different things happen. So will 2 scouts beat a lancer? And by the way, this is Alpha 1 footage. So any sort of parody, you might say, wow, 1 lancer beats 2 dogs. Cool. That's not going to be relevant to final build, but that's just how Alpha 1 was. And of course, I do point out the Hedgehog art is super temporary. And also, we can see just how bad Vulcans were. This doesn't, the Exos are clumped. This doesn't feel like this is a fight that the Vulcans should win, but the Exos win, but they do with 2, which is fun. Of course, the other thing to point out is that, well, turrets became interesting. We can see right here a couple build orders that they put together for the pre-alpha tournament. Different builds, and it was really interesting to see, as of course we see that the cannon rush here that really dominated the meta of pre-alpha and Alpha 1. But it was interesting to see how people like Monk would go, and they had an idea about how to play the game. They had been iterating and playing on it, and then we'd see players, different players partying and Kiwi and whatever, go and just play it totally differently and beat everyone because, you know, they're pro gamers for a reason. By the way, we have to point out with these turrets, you can hide a Bob. This has since been changed, but you could hide a Bob in your turret. So you actually could not kill the morphing Bob. The turrets would just go up. So it turned into these turret versus counter turret shenanigans. We can see that right here, where you would just try to rely on defender's advantage and the ability to build more Bobs, or to build with more Bobs than your opponent and just try to get your cannons up faster. And it was this really weird thing where we can see right here where it's just cancel, build tower, cancel, build tower. There was an overcharge, which really also was a little broken in pre-alpha. A little bit better now. That just made Bobs do so much damage and literally never die. But yeah, no, these turret shenanigans were really, really awkward, and I'm glad it's changed. But there were other builds. Scarlet was playing around with this 2 factory expand build, which absolutely punished anyone not as good. Hedgehogs are very fast. You know, they have to reset, but they're very fast. So if you don't have your surrounds properly, you would just really tend to lose. But yeah, there are a couple different creep camps that were in the game. There's this health camp, which was a healing aura, which really, a lot of these were useful for the money. The resource camp, the healing camp. I don't know that the healing camp really did all that much, but this speed camp You can see it right here. Dogs used to slow other dogs, or scouts used to slow other scouts as well, which just meant that you have one more scout than your opponent, you lose the game. Again, this has since been changed, and that was also probably a product of map design as well. But yeah, it was a fun time. But no worries, you could go and you could cannon rush instead, or you could turret rush instead, and it would be fine. But of course, so we're talking about tournaments. We had the pre-alpha tournament, and this was put on. There were 4 teams. I wanted to play, I couldn't. We can listen to cats.
Super inefficient here, gonna lose a bunch of units in the process. Turrets are insane as far as damage output is concerned.
Turrets were insane.
Obviously with the big disadvantage that they cannot move.
And not to mention all the lost mining time.
Once you have so many Skyriders, your Exos literally do nothing.
Yeah. Oh, this was also fun, and something that was we gave tons of feedback over, and that is each Skyrider. I don't know if you all remember, but from the gameplay reveal back in June, in the Stormgate Nexus article and in the video I put out, I was like, okay, we know what everything does, but we don't know what the Skyrider does. We do, at least for pre-alpha, alpha 1. They drop a bubble. That's those blue circles right there. And any range damage coming into it, or really any damage originating from outside of the bubble, nullified, 0, dark swarm to the extreme, and they last forever. So a lot of if you got out of the cannon stage, which, you know, happened, a lot of the meta turned into building more Skyriders than your opponent. And it was just Exo Skyrider all over the place. In my opinion, kind of not the best gameplay, but again, that's alpha. All right, that is very early into the gameplay cycle, into building and iterating and things like that. But yeah, these fights were silly. We can see right here, Parting and Scarlet just
we are super grateful just to all of the time and attention that the testers and players have put into it so far, and I think very humbled as a team to see what you've already done with something that is such an early state of gameplay. And
that was actually, we're gonna pause this because my voice is gonna come on in a second. That has been one of the coolest parts of this alpha, pre-alpha. Frost Giant are not blowing smoke when they talk about how this is a gameplay alpha. This is not a video alpha. This is not a marketing alpha where it's like, oh, come on in and build hype. They've actively been iterating. I had several discussions with one of the devs about how the pathing needed, the stutter stepping was a little weird, and we not just me, other players as well, and we kind of figured out what was wrong there. Because again, this is alpha and pre-alpha, and we're improving. It's become pretty common. You can see all those 1v1 rooms on the left. It's become pretty common for someone to just start streaming their game in the pre-alpha, and then everyone pops in, devs, pro gamers, community members, just random people in the alpha, and it's turning into a pretty fun community, which is pretty awesome, and that community is only going to continue to increase as we get more as more testers start to arrive. But just want to point that out, like, again, the devs are being, for those of us behind the curtain, and you know, I'm not trying to be exclusive here, just those of us that are at the moment. The devs are being super open, and they are actively iterating on things. I can tell you, for example, the things we were talking about in terms of stutter stepping, it's gotten so much better between alpha 1 and alpha 2, which is really fantastic. But pre-alpha, we had that one tournament, and then alpha, we had another tournament, and this time I got to cast it, which was pretty cool. We set up there. Those were our top 8. You can see it was Attico and I had the most scuffed production imaginable, where I was sharing screens with 2 different bases. He doesn't really have that production. Now the Skyrider bubble gets popped, so Lucifron just has to get on top. He has got to get in right now, otherwise he will lose that third. But the Skyrider bubble has minimized, I think, enough of the damage here, even as Lucifron gets on top of it. So yeah, eventually Lucifron dives on top, but the bubble shields the rest, and it is just so much damage that Lucifron is taking right now. No, eventually Parting. And yeah, of course, Parting was the king of the pre-alpha. One of the kings. We're gonna have the Vulcans dash forward there, and we just don't have the upgrade from Kiwi, and so now Parting gets on top here. He senses blood, but he's in the range of the Vulcans, and there are more of them. Watch the Exos fall. That was not the play there, Parting.
Kiwan decided to go up the ramp. He's gonna get the turret kill first, and now the Skyriders can just bubble his own units. And it seems like the Exos from Kiwan are making short work of his opponents. All of those mobs might be overcharged, but they take damage all the same. And the base is very low health right now. With the turret going down, that base going down in the natural, it didn't even get a lot of mining. I could see Parting GGing out of here, because that evac didn't have enough damage to sustain him into a victory, and it is gonna be Kiwan winning 2-0 on the finals of the end of Alpha tournament here today.
And one thing I gotta point out here, right? Because those the couple fights they show in that video and that recap of what was a round of 8 onwards broadcast, that doesn't really show the promise of things. And I know I do Stormgate Nexus, and I know I'm financially tied into this, and I know Frost Giant gave me early access to this video that they were putting out so we could make content about it. But there were legitimately some, and yeah, look, it's only Vanguard versus Vanguard. They're lacking tech, they're lacking design, they're lacking, I'm sure actual technical things, not just missing components of their tech tree. But there were a couple games that we got in that Alpha 1 tournament, and again, brief snapshots can't really show it, but there were a couple games, and I want to say it was Kiwi and Mixu actually, game 2 in that series, that was just, it showed promise. I think is the best way to say that. We saw multitasking all over the place. The game went very late. And it was actually really, like, it was starting to show that promise that we hope for as RTS fans, as esports fans. And yes, the bubbles were broken. And yes, cannon rushes were really, turret rushes were very off-putting, to the point that I think that I kind of stopped playing for a little bit, not because it's a bad game, just the turrets were really broken, and that's not the style of game I like to play. First of all, that's been fixed. Second of all, again, from the Kiwi and Mixu series and others, we could really, and Vortex Kiwi as well, we could really start to see the promise that exists. It's not there yet, but the promise for really, really awesome games. Oh, that's actually really cool. Point this out. Can I go back slightly? Let me go back slightly. Yeah, this was actually pretty cool. So one of the things that they added on the map that it took us about a week and a half to figure out is that they added flowers. So you can see these purple flowers right here, and there's that area. That's a slow. That's an AoE slow that makes it really hard to run down this ramp. I won a game or two because I snuck a scout forward and triggered the slowing flower, and then everything was clumped up and I had a big concave and I won the game. It was really satisfying. They also added a like a healing flower, like a lotus fruit or whatever it is in League of Legends, where you could go and you would heal that, and that really changed the efficiency of taking camps in the early game. But yeah, right now we just see more fights from this is from the pre-alpha tournament, the EPA. But also, this is pretty cool. So they have named their testing phases after different, they say RTS units in the voiced video, but Apocalypse is, maybe that's a unit in some other thing. Bailing, of course. Things didn't explode is the joke they're making. And actually, things have been really smooth. But Chronosphere is not a unit. It's the ultimate of Faceless Void, or it's a building in Command & Conquer. It's not a unit. That's my big complaint. Of course, the other exciting thing is that Infernals are in Alpha 2, and that's all. It's super cool to play a non-mirror matchup here. Like, these gaunts are pretty awesome, where you can kind of see it. Yeah, you can see it a little bit. The gaunts, their attacks do a splash damage, and it does a dot. But the cool thing is, anything that dies under the effect of that dot, it'll spawn a little fiend. And if you remember from the video that went out, from the Gamescom video, brutes split into 2 fiends. 1 brute, 2 fiends. So these gaunt openers that people have been messing around with, fiends do a lot of damage. They do a lot of DPS. Of course, in this build, things can change, but they die very quickly. So a lot of builds have centered around getting these brute openers and taking camps and doing things like that. But there are a couple people opening gaunts and just getting themselves fiends that way. So we can see that a little bit here. Also, I want to point this out. So this they're calling this a barrow right now, infernal barrow or something like that. But this is a supply structure. This is the supply structure for the Infernals. And the super cool thing about it is that the supply is kind of like overlords. They spawn these little creatures on top that will aggro in an area, and they give extra supply. So like the barrow gives base supply, and then they'll give more supply on top of it. And you can use them defensive early, but you can also like somewhat punish the supply of your opponent without having to kill the entire structure. Pretty cool. But of course, as they remind us at the end of things, as we've gotten through this video, sign up for the beta. like wishlist them on Steam, because again, that really does help. I think they're at like 60 or something right now, top 60 on the setup. And who knows? Hopefully, we'll get more things soon. But that's their recap of the Alpha 1, Alpha 2, of the pre-alpha of the tournament. I had so much fun casting that, by the way. That was really cool. And the absolute jankiest production. I mean, we're screen sharing from, we're stealing 2 players' screen shares from Discord because, well, no one, the observer client's not ready. Like, it's pre-alpha. That they didn't have that implemented yet. So that was a lot of fun. How do you think? How do you feel? We saw a brief snapshot of the Infernals. How do you feel about that? And in general, where do y'all stand on the development here? Alpha 1 was a bit iffy for me. Skyrider Wars and the turrets shenanigans. Not the type of game I like to play. But again, Alpha and things are testing. I've been having so much fun with Alpha 2. I mean, I know, again, we've discussed potential conflict of interest, whatever, but I'm saying genuinely, last weekend I spent the good majority of my weekend playing Stormgate. And in fact, one of the, outside of PhD stuff, one of the significant reasons that I have not been casting on my Twitch channel as much as I would like to is because I have been sucked into playing Stormgate a little bit too much. So that's how I feel right now. That I've been enjoying it personally. I'm really excited to see where the Infernal tech tree goes, what their third faction is. But yeah, how do you all feel about the pace of development? Is this this video right here, the one that they put out, and then the creators being able to talk about it? Is this the type of content you want to see from Frost Giant? Because again, in that video they put out most recently with the Spriggan reveal, they talk about how they don't have a marketing department. So this is their marketing. This is, and again, conflict of interest as they are. Is this the type you want to see out of them? The type of stuff you want to see out of them? Because if so, pass that information along and we'll get more stuff like this, hopefully. But anyways, hope you enjoyed this, and I'll see you next time.